Hello my dear children, Namaste and welcome to yet another session of our Class 10 ICSE one-shot series. This is Ambika, Master Teacher of Biology at Vedantu. I hope all of you are doing great. Your preparations must be going in full swing now, I'm assuming, because last few days left before your board exams begin. And here we go. Before you forget concepts in biology, I thought it's very, very important to give you chapters in one capsule, one single capsule, because bio is going to be your very last board exam, right? So before you completely forget this and move on to the other subjects, definitely these will be useful, especially chapters like human physiology and plant physiology. All of these we will get done within the next few days. Okay, so here we go. Today is going to be another concept heavy chapter in one shot, the reproductive system. And as always, here is an inspiring quote for you. You learn more from failure than from success. Don't let it stop you. Failure builds character. Although it was said by somebody, some anonymous person, the source is anonymous, but it definitely gives a wonderful message, because whoever is in a successful position today knows a lot about failure. And success that you achieve by a single step or like within a shortcut, using a shortcut, definitely doesn't stay that glorious for a long time. It's going to be very temporary. So let's make sure we achieve everything by following our heart's dreams, and let's not get worried or discouraged by any simple failure or a small failure or even big. It may be seemingly big, but all of that is just going to be part of the journey. As long as we learn from it, that's all that matters. Okay, so let's move ahead. Here we go. We start this chapter talking about the human male reproductive system. As you know, children, one-shot series are meant to give you chapters in one shot, basically an overview or the chapter at a glance. So in case you want to know more details about the concepts in this chapter, please do make it a point to go to the ICSE Biology playlist. We've discussed every concept in this chapter very well in detail. Okay, we've taken a lot of time to discuss them. Please do go back and watch them. Okay, so here we go to give you an overview, starting off with the male reproductive system. The male sex organs are the testes, which we also call the testicles. Here you need to know what they do. They basically help in sperm production and also secretion of the male sex hormone, which is testosterone. Okay, and then after that, there is the epididymis or the epididymis. Okay, and what does that do? That basically is the site where sperms undergo maturation and get stored until they are mature and ready for release. And from there starts the ejaculatory duct, which is the vas deferens. And on its pathway, the sperm, when it moves through the vas deferens, let's keep in mind that it collects nourishing fluid from male accessory reproductive glands, such as the prostate gland and the bulbourethral gland. And finally, it becomes semen, the fluid which we call semen. Sperm plus the nourishing fluid secreted by the accessory glands is what we call semen. And semen is the fluid which comes to the urethra, which is the common pathway for the expulsion of semen and urine in the case of a male. Okay, and that's about the parts of the male reproductive system. Okay, and moving ahead, parts of the female reproductive system. Understanding this is very, very important, because rest of the chapter is going to be based on your understanding of this structure. Okay, children. So here we go. The female sex organs include a pair of ovaries, one ovary here and one ovary here. Right. And then what happens? They release ova, which is the female gamete. Right. And then the parts, the fallopian tube which follows here, fallopian tube, as you can see, we also call it the oviduct. Okay, the oviduct or the fallopian tube, which is the site of fertilization. Okay, and then comes the uterus, which is the sac-like structure that nourishes the growing embryo or the fetus. Okay, this entire sac-like structure is the uterus, lined by very, very thick, cushiony, layered walls. Okay, and then the opening of the uterus towards the exterior starts with the cervix. Cervix is the opening of the uterus, which leads into a passage which is called the vagina. Okay, and that leads to the exterior. Okay, so these are the major parts of the female reproductive system. The most important thing you need to know is the function of each of them, especially fallopian tube and the uterus. Fallopian tube, let's remember always that it is the site of fertilization, because many children, even in my live session earlier, I saw that many of you gave the answer as uterus when I asked you the site of fertilization, but that's not the case. The fertilized egg from the fallopian tube is what descends into the uterus, and uterus is where implantation occurs or pregnancy gets established. Okay, and moving ahead to the female reproductive cycle, which is slightly complex again. The detailed explanation, I have given that in our regular session of the ICSE, which you can find in the ICSE Biology playlist. Okay, but then at one glance, if you have to know about this, where do you start? Of course, let's start with the hypothalamus. Yes, because that's the switch on off point of the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus, and then the pituitary hypothalamus releases GnRH, so the gonadotropin releasing hormones, and that would go and tell the pituitary to release FSH and LH. Okay, what do? They go and stimulate the ovary to release estrogen. Okay, there we are. Estrogen. What does the estrogen do? Estrogen ensures that egg maturation occurs, and the mature egg gets released. Basically, ovulation occurs because of the effect of estrogen. Now, children, also keep in mind the spelling of estrogen, fetus and all such terms. It doesn't matter whether it's OE or just E. It's just a difference between British and American spellings. Okay, I commonly follow OE, which is the British spelling, but then even if you write ESTRO, it's not wrong. Okay, and then the egg matures and gets released, which is ovulation. And what happens next? Once the egg has been released, your uterus, the female's uterus, begins to prepare for pregnancy, prepares to receive the growing baby in case fertilization may happen. That is why we've written here, builds up the uterine lining. So what happens? Corpus luteum. Okay, corpus luteum, which is a structure, which is a very, very important structure, it releases its hormone, which is progesterone. Okay, and then what does progesterone do? Progesterone basically maintains the uterine lining, maintains the endometrial lining of the uterus. Progesterone, and along with that, HCG. There is a hormone called HCG that is also important in maintaining pregnancy. But anyway, at this point, let's pause for a bit. It's important to remember that here, once the uterine lining has been built up and all the preparation to receive the embryo or receive the zygote is happening, there are two possibilities. Either fertilization can occur or fertilization may not occur. Now, this pathway is in case fertilization does occur. So what happens? The zygote gets formed, and because of that, HCG or human chorionic gonadotropin gets released in order to support progesterone in maintaining pregnancy. Okay, so HCG, progesterone, all of them together maintain the uterine lining until the end of 9 months, so that pregnancy safely progresses. But in case no pregnancy is established, what happens? The prepared endometrial lining and corpus luteum, everything breaks down in the form of blood flow, which we call menstruation. And at this point, it's important to remember that progesterone levels would drop because their major function is to maintain pregnancy. So, okay, fertilization did not occur. I'm not required much anymore in this particular cycle. So, my level drops off. That is what progesterone says. Okay, so this is it. And then the next cycle continues. This cycle happens every 28 days, roughly 28 days in the case of a human female. Okay, so this is the female reproductive cycle. And to give you an idea about the menstrual cycle, which is also very important, there are 4 major stages in which the menstrual cycle progresses. The first stage, which is called the menstrual phase. Day 1 to day 5 roughly is going to be called the menstrual phase, wherein the endometrial lining sheds in the form of blood and mucus through the vagina. That is menstrual phase. The second phase is what we call the follicular phase, which lasts for roughly 9 to 10 days. Okay, the duration is what is given to you within brackets. 9 to 10 days roughly is the follicular phase, wherein the follicles are getting stimulated. I told you FSH is released, FSH and LH by the pituitary, and they go and tell the ovaries to release the egg, to release estrogen so that ovum development can happen. So follicular phase. Okay, preparation for release of the egg is what follicular phase is. Follicles are getting mature. And then comes a very, very important phase, which is the ovulation phase, wherein the mature ovarian follicle has given out its mature egg. The mature ovum is released. Okay, and then comes, which lasts for only 1 day. Ovulation phase is only for a duration of 1 day, 24 hours. Okay, within those 24 hours, if fertilization does not occur, menstruation is back. Okay, but before that, the last phase is called the luteal phase. Okay, wherein the egg gets released. Okay, the last stage, roughly around 12 to 14 days of the menstrual cycle, is what we call the luteal phase. And then within that time, again, as I said, it comes back to the next cycle's beginning, which is menstrual phase. So this is roughly 1 calendar month, or roughly around 28 to 30 days in the case of a human female. Once again, the names of the stages: menstrual phase, follicular phase, ovulation phase, and the luteal phase. Okay, and now moving ahead, what if fertilization does occur? This is what shows you the progression in case that happens. First of all, the ovulated secondary oocyte gets released. As I said, ovulation occurs. In case within those 24 hours of ovulation phase, fertilization did occur, what happens? Fertilization, as you can see here. And here is the zygote, which is formed in the fallopian tube, as I said, because that is the site of fertilization. All of this kind of cell division stages progress because zygote is a single cell, right? That divides into two. Finally, it forms a cluster of cells which we call morula. Okay, and the morula comes in and descends into the uterus, forms a structure called the blastocyst, which gets implanted roughly around day 7 after fertilization, gets implanted in the uterine wall. Okay, implantation, the stage associated with it is the blastocyst. Remember that, very, very important. And then after implantation, what happens? It means pregnancy is established, the embryo is formed, and until about 8 weeks, we call it the embryo. After that, we call it the fetus. Okay, until the end of pregnancy, we call it the fetus. And this is the endometrial lining, the Kushleen lining, which nourishes this growing embryo or the fetus. Okay. Now, this is to give you an idea about fetal growth happening from 8 to 40 weeks. As I said, 8 weeks because fetal stage begins from the 8th week. After that, we don't call it the embryo anymore. Okay, until the end of pregnancy, this is how growth occurs. And yes, another very, very important concept for all of you, whether you're CBSE or ICSE, placenta is a very, very, very exam favorite question. What is placenta and what are its functions? As you can see, this is a growing fetus, and this part of it is zoomed in to show you what a placenta looks like. Placenta is basically the structure, a set of tissues which acts as the organ of nourishment to the growing embryo in terms of giving it its nutrients and the oxygen it requires, and also removing the excretory products, and along with that, elimination of unwanted gases like carbon dioxide and all of that. All of this is performed by the tissue called placenta. So what are the components of placenta? All of this, you can see the fetus's blood vessels, you can see the mother's blood vessels, and the common barrier which is in between them, right? And exchange keeps happening between them, and this is what we call the umbilical cord. Okay, so always keep in mind, placenta and umbilical cord are not synonymous to each other, but they are closely associated, as you can see. Connection between the mother and the fetus. Okay, so to give you better idea about the placenta, here we go. The functions of the placenta. I think this illustration beautifully shows you what all it does, in the sense to the baby what goes, and from the baby what comes into the mother's blood. Okay, so have a look at that. Whatever is useful goes into the baby through the placenta. Whatever is not necessary for the baby gets eliminated and goes into the mother's blood. And from the mother's blood, the rest of the excretion passes on along with the mother's bloodstream. These are the major functions of the placenta in terms of producing these hormones, and it provides oxygen and nutrients and also helps in excretion or elimination of a lot of waste matter. And yes, for the ICSE children out there, fetal membranes are also important to know. Not that it's been asked very frequently, but if at all, because it's part of your syllabus, you must know the names of all the fetal membranes. Okay, amnion, chorion, allantois and yolk sac with their respective functions, and yes, the amniotic fluid. I think amniotic fluid is part of CBSE syllabus also. So what does it do? It's a fluid which protects the embryo from mechanical jerks. In case you want to connect it with this, that's why I've put this picture also for you. And whatever else amniotic fluid does, that's also listed out here. It prevents sticking of the embryo to the amnion or the amnion lining, and also maintains a uniform pressure around the embryo. Okay, these are the functions of the amniotic fluid, and these are the four major fetal membranes, the four major membranes which protect the fetus. Okay, and coming to the last stage of pregnancy, which is parturition or childbirth. These are the major stages of childbirth, the major stages of labor. This is stimulated by oxytocin. Very, very, very important to remember that it is stimulated by the hormone oxytocin. It occurs in 3 stages. Labor or parturition occurs in 3 stages. First of all, dilation of the cervix. The baby's head comes and touches the cervix of the mother's uterus. When that happens, messages or signals are sent to the mother's brain to release oxytocin. Oxytocin gets released, and then expulsion of fetus begins to happen, because when oxytocin is released, contraction of the uterus begins to happen. And when that occurs, it means trying to expel the fetus from the mother's body is beginning to happen. And finally, once the baby has been expelled, delivery of the placenta is also equally important. The last stage, delivery of the placenta. Okay, that is when we call labor as complete. Parturition is complete. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the summary of this chapter, children. I know there were a lot of concepts, but yes, all of them are very, very important from an exam perspective, because it's a concept heavy chapter. So here we go. Here are our 2019 toppers, children who studied with Vedantu and scored amazing results, got amazing results for their class 10 boards, 96, 95 and 93.16% respectively. You can definitely be there. All that you have to do is a little bit of extra hard work from your side. It doesn't matter whatever has happened until now, from today until the end of your board exams, how you plan your time, how you plan your focus to be channelized, that is all that matters. Certainly it is doable. Okay, so do not lose hope. We are always there to give you support, as we've been doing, as the 4 of us have been doing with the fast track series for all your science and math subjects. Those of you who've not watched those fast track series videos, not been part of those sessions, some of them have been live, some have been premiered, but then whatever it is, regardless of all of that, all your chapters have been covered in this series. So do check out the playlist. The playlist I will be showing you at the end of this session. So in case you have not been aware of this, definitely do make it a point to watch them. Okay, and it's now time for a quiz based on your important chapter, reproductive system. First of all, the part that thickens each month, sorry, it has to be month, okay, not each month. Each month in preparation for pregnancy. What is it? The endometrium, the fallopian tube, the ovary, or is it the vagina? Okay. I think I've told you this multiple times over the last few months. I must have told you this so many times. So you must know the answer. Your time ends in 3, 2, 1 and go. The answer is endometrium. Okay, next one. The stage of embryo development at which implantation occurs is called dash. Implantation. I told you this a few minutes back. Okay. Is it the blastocyst? Is it morula? Is it ovum? Or is it the fetus? Implantation. Your time ends in 3, 2, 1 and go. The answer is blastocyst. Blastocyst is the stage which gets implanted, and that is when we say pregnancy is established. Morula comes before that. Ovum is of course the egg, which is the gamete. Fetus is after 8 weeks of pregnancy. Now, the periods from fertilization to birth of the baby is called dash. Is it parturition? Is it implantation? Is it gestation? Is it blastulation? Okay, the period from fertilization to birth of the baby. And your time ends in 3, 2, 1 and go. The answer is gestation. The period of pregnancy is what we mean by gestation. So I just give you the term implantation as an option to confuse you. In fact, gestation would be the period from implantation to birth of the baby. Okay. Now, progesterone is secreted by which of these? Is it by the endometrium? Is it by the Graafian follicle, corpus luteum or anterior pituitary? Yes. Can be a little confusing, I completely agree, but very important to know. And your time ends in 3, 2, 1 and go. The answer is corpus luteum is what secretes progesterone in order to maintain pregnancy. And the next one. Which of these is the initial stage of the menstrual cycle? Is it menses? Is it luteal phase, follicular phase or the ovulatory phase? The initial phase or stage 1 of the menstrual cycle. Your time ends in 3, 2, 1 and go. The answer is very simple. It is menses, but it can be confusing. Now, because I told you this a few minutes ago, you may be able to recall this, but at the time of your exam, you must know very clearly that this is what the menstrual cycle starts with. Beginning of a menstrual cycle is shedding of the endometrial lining. Next one, fertilization occurs in uterus, fallopian tube, testes, vagina. Okay, and there we go. The answer is yes, the fallopian tube, the site of fertilization. And there we go. Well done, children. Clap for yourselves and be proud that we have looked at the overview of another very, very important concept-heavy chapter, which is reproductive system. So do make it a point to go to the biology playlist to watch the videos more in detail, children, because I understand there are a lot of things to remember in this chapter. And here are our amazing 2019 results. Children who studied with Vedantu have made us proud by giving us some amazing results. We have got incredible results from CBSE 12th, CBSE 10th, our ICSE 10th and also KVPY and PRMO batches. Definitely you can also be there, children. We would definitely love it to see all your names and to see that all of you have benefited from our session. So we are always there to support you. As I said, through different kinds of playlists, ICSE children, you would not find many sources out there on YouTube or any other source which gives a lot of explanation basically specifically based on your ICSE syllabus. But then we've been doing it for you as much as possible. As I said, biology playlist is right here. Every chapter has been covered according to your syllabus. And most of your important topics have been covered. And even in that, we've been doing diagram series and many other series. Fast track is done again for bio. One shot is still happening. So do continue following us on these. Fast track for all the subjects, physics, chemistry, bio and math. You can find it in this list. And Students Corner, which I would say cannot be underestimated, not because I've been doing this, but definitely this is as important as giving you academic support, because just by knowing everything in your textbook doesn't give you the guarantee that you will do your exams well. You also need to have the right state of mind. You need to be in the right state of mind. You need to know how to plan your timing during exam, before your exam, anything and everything you can think of related to all the challenges you possibly face during exam season. You can find the answers to that in Students Corner. So do have a look at these also if you haven't seen it yet. And of course, if you have found today's session useful, please do remember to hit the like button now, children, because we've done this chapter within half an hour, within like less than 30 minutes, we have managed to do an overview of the entire chapter. So again, for the same reason, please remember to share it with all your ICSE friends also, because certainly everyone's going to benefit from this last minute revision. And do remember to subscribe to our channel. Hit the subscribe button now, because until your exams are done, we will keep coming up with a lot of motivating and a lot of creative content so that your exams are much easier than you ever thought. And also, as always, I'm always available at the click of an email send button. So anything specific you want me to answer, do feel free to send me an email at ambika.gopalakrishnan@vedantu.com. Okay, and I would also love to see your feedback in the comment section below. Keep studying hard, stay motivated. Spirits should always be high, and we are there to support you. Until we meet again tomorrow with yet another amazing session, this is Ambika signing off. Bye bye.